Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what truly makes someone wise? Is it the number of books on their shelf or the way they carry themselves in everyday life? And more importantly, could you unknowingly be mistaking foolishness for strength? Let's get something straight. Wisdom isn't about having a high IQ, fancy degrees, or being well-read. It goes deeper than that. According to ancient Stoic philosophy, true wisdom is reflected in how you live, how you think, and how you treat the people around you. It's not about surface-level smarts, it's about alignment with reason and virtue. On the flip side, foolishness isn't just being unaware or uneducated. The Stoics believed it's actually the failure to live with clarity, integrity, and discipline. And in this video, we're diving headfirst into something that might make you pause and think: 6 signs of a foolish woman, viewed through the lens of Stoic teachings. But before your mind jumps to judgment, take a breath. This isn't about shaming or labeling anyone. Stoicism doesn't promote finger-pointing or superiority. Instead, it invites deep self-reflection, responsibility, and personal growth. So as we explore each of these 6 signs, I encourage you to shift your focus inward. Don't watch this to evaluate others. Watch it to challenge yourself. Because in the end, Stoicism isn't about them, it's about us. Why turn to Stoic wisdom? Because this ancient philosophy isn't locked in the past. It's timeless, practical. It teaches us how to quiet the noise, rise above emotional chaos, and lead with calm, purpose, and strength. The writings of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus weren't just for their era, they were built to last. And their insights are just as powerful in today's world of distractions and ego-driven narratives. So with that foundation laid, let's begin. The first sign might surprise you, because it has nothing to do with appearance, status, or intelligence. Now that we've set the foundation, let's look closely at the first sign, a subtle but powerful indicator of foolishness through the lens of Stoic thought. Sign number 1, prioritizing appearance over character. Picture this. A refined woman in her 60s steps into a room. Her outfit is flawless, her hair perfectly styled, her posture elegant. Everything about her presentation is designed to impress. People glance her way. She moves with confidence and carries the kind of polish that demands attention. But as the evening unfolds, something begins to shift. Her charm is only surface deep. She cuts people off mid-sentence, talks over others, and subtly redirects every discussion back to herself. It's not that she's mean, it's just that she's single quotes absent, disconnected. Behind the pristine exterior is someone unsure of who she really is. Remember someone like this in my own life. Let's call her Margaret. She was part of a book club I once joined. Margaret always looked like she stepped out of a fashion magazine new bag every month. Designer shoes, glowing selfies on social media. But when I went through one of the hardest moments of my life, the loss of my mother, I opened up to the group, searching for comfort. Margaret barely acknowledged it. She quickly shifted the topic to her skincare routine. That moment stuck with me, because beauty might attract attention, but it's character that creates connection. And that's exactly where the Stoics draw the line. To prioritize appearance while neglecting inner growth isn't just shallow, it's dangerous. It's a path to emotional emptiness. Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius were unwavering about this. What you wear, how you look, or even the compliments you receive, they're fleeting. The real measure lies in your choices, your values, and the strength of your inner life. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. In other words, if your mind is constantly focused on the mirror, never on meaning, your soul begins to lose depth. You become a shadow of the person you were meant to be. It's a quiet trap, especially for women. Society whispers constantly, to be seen, you must be young, thin, perfect. So we chase the glow. We spend money, sometimes thousands, on creams, fillers, fashion, all in pursuit of visibility. But no one tells you what to do when that glow fades. And it always does. This is where Stoicism offers a radical shift in perspective. It tells us to stop chasing reflections and start building resilience. It urges us to laugh not to impress, but because we understand just how strange and brief this life really is. You don't need to fight time. You can walk beside it. With grace. Margaret eventually left the group. She had the look, the lifestyle, the curated perfection. But deep down, I sensed loneliness. A polished life, but a quiet one. On the other hand, there was another woman, Joyce. In her late 70s. No makeup, soft cardigan, hands wrinkled by life. She listened fully. She remembered people's names. She noticed things. When she spoke, the room listened. She wasn't the center of attention, but she was the soul of the room. The Stoics would ask us this: will you be remembered for how you looked or for how you made people feel? Because only one of those truly endures. And if you've been caught in that never-ending cycle of needing to be perfectly put together just to feel worthy, hear this: you are already enough. Not because of how you present yourself, but because of the clarity, courage, and compassion you can grow within. That's the kind of beauty that doesn't wrinkle, fade, or vanish in photos. It's the calm in your voice during chaos. It's the patience in your advice. It's the kindness you leave behind long after you're gone. So next time you look into the mirror, pause. Don't just ask, how do I look? Ask instead, what am I building within? And that leads us to the second sign, one that reveals itself not in the mirror, but in the silence between conversations. So instead of asking, how do I look today? The deeper question is, who am I becoming? And that leads us directly to the next crucial sign. Sign number 2. Ignoring self-responsibilities, a quiet kind of suffering that often hides beneath the surface. One that stems not from what happens to us, but from our refusal to own our part in it. We've all experienced it, haven't we? Those moments when it's far easier to look outward than to look within. Blaming circumstances feels safer than confronting our own choices. And for many women who've carried decades of responsibility juggling, families, careers, expectations, it's only natural to feel that much of life has been shaped by forces outside of their control: partners, children, economic pressures, the ever-changing world around them. But the Stoics offer a hard but freeing truth. When we ignore self-responsibility, we unknowingly give away the very power we need to heal, grow, and live with peace. I once knew a woman who had recently retired. Let's call her Carol. She often reflected on all the things she had wanted to do but never pursued. A dream of traveling, a small business idea, a love for painting. But whenever someone asked why she never followed those dreams, her answers pointed elsewhere. Her husband didn't support her ideas. The timing wasn't right. Her children needed her. Life just got in the way. Now, there's truth in every one of those reasons. But over time, those explanations became a protective shell, keeping her from confronting the reality that she never truly took ownership of her path. She had surrendered her agency piece by piece, until what remained was a life shaped mostly by reaction, not intention. That's the danger of this mindset. It feels safe in the moment, but slowly, it erodes your power. The Stoics remind us that we don't have control over the winds of fate, but we do have control over the sails. Epictetus once said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." This isn't just ancient philosophy, it's backed by modern psychology. When we blame others, we may avoid guilt temporarily, but over time, it creates a cycle of helplessness. Bitterness grows, regret creeps in, and we become stuck. Self-responsibility, on the other hand, isn't about blaming yourself, it's about reclaiming your strength. It's about saying, "This is my life. I get to decide how I live it." That mindset transforms you from a passenger into the pilot. Let's say you feel distant from a friend you once held dear. You haven't spoken in years. Now you could wait. Hope she reaches out. Or you could choose to act. Pick up the phone. Send that message. Rekindle what was lost, not by waiting, but by daring. Because sometimes, that small moment of courage is all it takes to begin a ripple of change. Seneca put it beautifully. It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult. So ask yourself, where in your life have you handed over the wheel? And what might shift if you decided to take it back? In the next section, we explore a third sign, and this one reveals itself not in what a woman says, but in how she listens. So if responsibility is the first step toward freedom, then courage is what keeps you moving forward. And that brings us to the next challenge many women silently face. Sign number 3, overvaluing others' opinions. This is about courage, yes, the courage to turn inward, to admit your role in shaping the life you have, but also the courage to recognize something even more empowering, that if you helped build the life you're living now, then you also hold the power to rebuild it, reshape it, and imagine something entirely new. Taking responsibility isn't about blame, it's about liberation. And once you've done that, it opens the door to the next essential lesson in Stoic wisdom. Stop giving away your peace in exchange for approval. The third sign of foolishness, according to Stoicism, is the habit of overvaluing what others think. There's a quiet kind of exhaustion that builds up when you live beneath the weight of other people's expectations. For many women, especially those who've spent decades as mothers, partners, professionals, and caregivers, this pressure doesn't scream, it whispers. And over time, it becomes second nature. It starts with something small. A friend raises an eyebrow when you decline a holiday invitation. A relative makes a passing remark about what you wore to church. You speak up in a group, and suddenly the room goes silent. None of it is overt, but it's enough to make you second-guess yourself, not because you've done something wrong, but because someone might not approve. That's the danger. When we allow other people's opinions to override our own truth, we slowly erase ourselves. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly. A Roman emperor burdened with the responsibility of ruling an empire, yet deeply human in his inner struggles. He once wrote, "We love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." Let that sink in. We live our lives, raise families, build careers, only to hand over our self-worth to people who may not even know us well, let alone understand what truly matters to us. And in today's hyper-connected world, this pressure is magnified. Social media, group chats, subtle gossip circles, it's everywhere. Even women who never sought the spotlight often find themselves performing for an invisible audience. I once knew a woman retired, finally with time to pursue what she loved. She had always wanted to take a painting class. For years, she put it off, focused on raising her kids, supporting her husband's work. But now the opportunity was hers, and yet she hesitated. Not because she didn't want it, but because of what others might say. It's a waste of money. You're not an artist. Who are you to try something new at this age? These weren't her thoughts. They were voices she had absorbed, internalized, and mistaken as her own. That's the real tragedy of living under the weight of opinions. You stop hearing yourself. Your intuition, your desires, your spark, it all gets drowned out by a chorus of imagined judgment. The Stoics had a word for this: bondage. Epictetus warned that the need for approval compromises not just your freedom, but your integrity, your very sense of self. And it's not just an idea, it's a psychological truth. When you attach your worth to how others see you, you make yourself emotionally dependent on things you can't control. And that dependency creates anxiety, indecision, and a deep, aching dissatisfaction. Stoicism teaches a better way, a life anchored not by noise, but by values. Feedback from others can be useful, but it must be filtered. Ask yourself, are the voices you're listening to helping you grow? Or are they keeping you small? Are your actions aligned with your true values, or are they fueled by the fear of being misunderstood? There is something quietly revolutionary about a woman who later in life finally chooses to live for herself, who signs up for the art class, not because it fits anyone else's script, but because it lights something up inside her. That's Stoic wisdom, not loud rebellion, but steady alignment. The kind of inner strength that no longer needs applause to keep going. So what would happen if you stopped waiting for permission and simply began? Up next, we'll explore the fourth sign of foolishness, and this one hides in plain sight, in the endless distraction of drama and gossip. So once you no longer need the world's applause to move forward, you start walking a quieter path, one led not by popularity, but by peace. And that's where true wisdom begins to take root. Sign number 4, emotional instability and overreaction. It's a unique kind of chaos, not the kind that comes from the world around us, but from within. It's the internal storm that turns small frustrations into full-blown catastrophes. This is emotional instability. And among the signs of foolishness, this one is especially destructive. Now, let's be clear. Feeling deeply is not a flaw. The Stoics never argued that emotions are bad or unnatural. On the contrary, they believed emotions are part of what makes us human. But what they did warn against, and what still holds true today, is letting those emotions take control without pause, without thought, and without perspective. I once met a woman named Diane through a local community group. In her early 70s, she was intelligent, elegant, and widely respected. But she had one noticeable pattern. When emotions flared, even slightly, they often swept her away. One afternoon, her name was accidentally left off a volunteer list for a neighborhood event. A simple oversight. It was corrected almost immediately. But Diane didn't see it as a small mistake, she saw it as a personal rejection. She snapped at the organizer, distanced herself from the group, and disappeared for weeks. She convinced herself that she wasn't wanted, that the omission was deliberate. But the truth? Her reaction had little to do with the situation itself and everything to do with the story she built around it. That's the danger of overreaction. It blurs reality. It persuades us that we're being attacked even when no threat exists. It damages relationships, isolates us, and most of all steals our peace. We become prisoners of our own emotions. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "A man is as unhappy as he has convinced himself he is." It's not the event that causes the pain, it's the interpretation, the meaning we assign. Diane wasn't truly wounded by the missing name. She was wounded by the internal narrative that said, "I'm being excluded." And because she believed it, she lashed out, not just at others, but at her own well-being. The Stoics taught a better way. A way not of denial, but of discipline. They didn't ask us to feel less. They asked us to react less impulsively. When something upsets you, don't rush into action. Instead, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, is this really worth sacrificing my peace? Most of the time, the answer is no. That ability to pause, to choose your response instead of being yanked around by your emotions, that is one of the most powerful skills a human being can develop. And as we age, the skill becomes even more essential. Because with age should come more than just memories, it should bring mastery. The wise woman doesn't suppress her emotions, and she doesn't avoid discomfort. But she does refuse to let temporary feelings dictate permanent consequences. She chooses calm, not because life is always calm, but because she understands that she gets to decide how she responds. And that brings us to the fifth sign one. That's more subtle, but no less dangerous. A pattern that quietly erodes wisdom through distraction, comparison, and drama. Let's take a closer look. Emotional stability isn't weakness, it's a quiet form of authority. And when you choose to respond rather than react, you protect your dignity, elevate those around you, and give wisdom a space to take root. Sign. #5. Materialism and greed. Now, let's turn to something subtler, but just as corrosive, the belief that happiness can be bought, that peace can be packaged. That fulfillment comes from what we own. There's a certain kind of emptiness, one that no amount of wealth, luxury, or square footage can ever seem to satisfy. And yet, in our modern world, many fall into the trap of chasing more. More clothes, more shoes, more upgrades. The belief creeps in, if I just get that one thing, then I'll feel whole. But according to Stoic wisdom, this is one of the most seductive and deceptive forms of self-delusion. The foolish woman becomes defined not by who she is, but by what she owns. Her self-worth becomes entangled in labels, brands, and square footage. It's not about joy anymore, it's about image. And the Stoics saw this clearly. Materialism. They taught masquerades as success. On the surface, it looks like freedom, comfort, luxury, achievement. But underneath, it's a beautifully decorated prison. A gilded cage, and the bars? They're made of desire built one purchase at a time. This isn't just about overspending or shopping sprees. It's about something deeper, the mistake of confusing possessions with identity. I've met women who, from the outside, looked incredibly successful. A new car in the driveway, gorgeous vacations on Instagram, designer handbags neatly lined on closet shelves, but inside, restlessness, disconnection, envy, a sense that despite everything, something is still missing. Why? Because everything they've built is external, and anything external can be taken away in a moment. Epictetus reminded us of this truth. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. It's not about what you own. It's about what you need to feel enough. The moment you start chasing things in order to feel complete, you've already declared to yourself that you are incomplete. Perhaps no story illustrates This contrasts more powerfully than that of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. Admired for her grace, beauty, and high social standing, she seemed to embody luxury. The pearls, the designer gowns, the lavish lifestyle. But behind the glamour was a woman who knew heartbreak on a scale few could imagine. After her husband, President John F. Kennedy, was assassinated, none of her status or wealth could shield her from grief. In the years that followed, she quietly retreated from the public eye. She turned to reading, to working, to living more simply. And in that silence, she found something the Stoics called ataraxia, a deeper, more enduring peace. Because materialism isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides behind subtle masks: approval, comparison, status seeking. Even the phrase, "I deserve this," can be a disguise for pain we haven't faced. But the Stoics saw through that illusion. They taught that real strength comes from within, not from objects, but from values, from living intentionally. Because when your self-worth is tied to possessions, your happiness becomes hostage to trends, to other people's opinions, to things you can't control. You fear losing what you have. You envy what others show. You measure yourself against constantly shifting standards, like trying to build a foundation on sand. The wiser path, the Stoic path, invites simplicity, not deprivation, but clarity. It invites you to pause and ask, do I truly need this? Or am I trying to soothe something deeper? Am I building a life that fulfills me, or decorating one that I secretly resent? This isn't about becoming a minimalist monk. It's about becoming a woman of intention. A woman who knows her worth, doesn't live in diamonds or handbags, but in her depth, her presence, and her peace. And one of the most powerful tools the Stoics practice to protect this peace: voluntary discomfort. Let's explore how choosing discomfort, rather than avoiding it, can unlock a kind of power most people never discover. When you stop chasing what glitters and start seeking what endures, you begin to live with true intention. But that journey only becomes real when you're willing to look inward. Sign number 6. Avoiding self-reflection and growth. Perhaps the most dangerous kind of foolishness is also the quietest, the kind that hides beneath the surface. It's not loud. It doesn't draw attention, but it slowly erodes a life from the inside out. It's the refusal to pause, to look inward, to ask difficult questions, to examine who we've become and why. This kind of avoidance can settle in slowly, especially for women later in life. After decades of managing families, building careers, enduring betrayals, illness, or grief, it's easy to slip into emotional survival mode. You keep going, you keep giving, you hold everything together. But somewhere in the middle of all that strength, the habit of self-reflection quietly disappears. You stop asking, am I still growing? Am I living in alignment with my values? And deep down, maybe it's because the answer feels too uncomfortable. But the Stoics warned, this refusal to reflect is the most direct path to stagnation. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, ruler of a vast empire, spent his nights not in indulgence or distraction, but in reflection. He asked himself where he had failed, where pride, fear, or ego had taken control, and how he could improve tomorrow. Not because he was weak, but because he understood something powerful: that strength without clarity is blind. That true leadership begins with personal accountability. A woman who avoids reflection, who distracts herself endlessly, who deflects blame, who resists feedback might appear composed. But beneath the surface, she's not protecting herself. She's delaying her growth and silently creating her own suffering. The life of Princess Diana illustrates this truth beautifully. Early in her public role, Diana struggled profoundly. Trapped in a cold marriage, scrutinized by the media, her smile often hid deep loneliness. For a while she coped by performing, by perfecting her image, by avoiding the pain. But something shifted. Later in life, Diana chose to face herself. She spoke candidly about her mental health, her mistakes, her insecurities. She sought help. She owned her story. And in that honesty, she transformed not into a perfect woman, but into a whole one. That's the paradox. Avoiding reflection looks like strength, composure, control, toughness. But psychologically, it's fear. Fear of what we might uncover if we really stop and listen. And for women in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, that fear can grow louder. It's too late to change. This is just who I am now. But the Stoics would passionately disagree. They believed that as long as there is breath in your body, growth is possible. The work of refining the soul does not expire. Without reflection, life becomes a loop. The same arguments, the same disappointments, the same regrets, cycling endlessly. But the moment you begin to turn inward, with honesty, with humility, you break that loop. You start to recognize your role in the patterns. You begin to take responsibility, not just for your past, but for what comes next. And it doesn't require radical change. It starts in small, quiet moments. A 5-minute pause before bed, asking yourself, did I live by my values today? It starts by choosing truth over ego, by saying, I'm not done learning. The foolish woman resists change. She hides from her own reflection. The wise woman, she meets it even when it hurts, because she knows that truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is the first doorway to freedom. That's the Stoic path. Not one of perfection, but of progress. Not rooted in pride, but in purpose. And it is always, always available to you. No matter your age, no matter your past. So now that we've explored these 6 signs, the final question remains: what does it actually look like to live wisely, according to the Stoics? Let's bring it all together. Throughout this journey, we've explored not just signs of foolishness, but quiet opportunities for transformation, growth, and inner freedom. At its heart, this video isn't just a list of warnings, it's a wake-up call. A mirror, an invitation. These 6 signs weren't meant to shame or criticize. They were meant to illuminate, to bring into focus the subtle habits, patterns, and beliefs that keep us small. The desire to impress instead of express. The habit of blaming rather than reflecting. The need for approval instead of trusting our own inner compass. For many women, especially those in their later years, life has been lived in service to others, children, spouses, careers, expectations. And somewhere along the way, the question of who am I becoming was quietly buried beneath the weight of duty, pain, or routine. Stoic philosophy lifts that question back into the light with clarity, with honesty, and with power. The Stoics remind us that wisdom doesn't come from how much we know, how flawless we appear, or how much we've accumulated. It comes from how we respond to challenges, to change, to ourselves. A foolish woman isn't unintelligent, she's unexamined. She's someone who avoids looking within, someone who escapes into distraction instead of doing the deeper work. But the wise woman? She's something else entirely. She doesn't run from discomfort, she leans into it. She faces her reflection without flinching. She asks herself, what needs to shift, not for others, but for my own peace. And most importantly, she understands one vital truth: it's never too late. Not at 60, not at 70, not ever. Wisdom doesn't come with age, it comes with awareness. And the moment you choose to live with intention, to realign your actions with your values, and to keep growing no matter how quietly you step out of foolishness and into freedom. This is not just a video, it's a challenge. To stop performing, to stop chasing what fades, to start building what lasts, and to rise not for applause, but for yourself. So now, take a breath and ask yourself, not with judgment, but with honesty, which woman am I becoming? The one led by impulse, pride, or fear, or the one grounded in reflection, courage, and freedom? Here's the truth: we've all been both, and that's okay. What matters most is what you choose next, because wisdom doesn't arrive in grand moments, it's built in small, quiet decisions. In the pause before reacting, in the willingness to say, I was wrong, in the choice to value peace over performance, and the moment you start turning inward, the moment you take ownership of your path, you rise. If something inside you stirred while watching this, don't let that feeling fade. Let it move you. Let it reshape how you speak to yourself, how you live, and who you are still becoming. Because if you're ready to walk this path, not perfectly, but intentionally, then keep going, keep growing, keep choosing clarity, courage, and calm. Wisdom isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you were always meant to be. And that journey, it begins now with you.